Okay, so far for all of our examples, every time we've had a leading coefficient, it has been 1. So now, what happens if our leading coefficient of our trinomial is greater than 1? There's two options. Either first, it has a greatest common factor that we need to take out, and then that'll make it go back down to 1. Or if we don't have a greatest common factor, what we're going to do is do the trinomials with the window method, except for we're going to do a few changes. So we're still going to put the first term here and the last term here. And then when we ask ourselves what numbers multiply to add or subtract to the middle, those factors are going to go in here. Then we're going to do the signs and put them in there with the factors, and then we're going to do greatest common factor window method like we did before. So on this first one, we check, and it does have a greatest common factor. And when I take out the 2, it becomes x squared plus 5x plus 6. And now that the leading coefficient of the trinomial is a 1, I can just do regular binomials. So I put the 2 out front, and then I ask myself, what are 2 things that multiply to be 6? And when I add them, I get 5, 3 and 2, and sign chart says both plus. So that's the first option. The second option is looking at number 20. I have 3g squared plus 8g plus 4. There is not a greatest common factor in this one. So I set up the window method with 3g squared and 4, and then I ask myself, and I do have to do this, I have to take the 3 times the 4 to change it to 12. So now I'm looking for things that multiply to be 12 and add up to 8, which is 6g and 2g. Then sign chart, both plus, says both will be plus here. My greatest common factor across the top is g. My greatest common factor across the bottom is plus 2. My greatest common factor down is 3g. And my greatest common factor down over here is plus 2. So my binomials are 3g plus 2 and g plus 2. You can turn the heater on if you want. Okay, number 29 here, we have 10x squared, 21x, and 10. They do not have a greatest common factor. So I change this into a window method of 10x squared minus 10. And those multiply to be 100. So I ask myself, what are things that multiply to be 100? And when I subtract them, I get 21. And the answer is 25 and 4. And my sign chart is a plus minus, so the bigger one gets a plus. Now these have in common 2x. These ones have in common 5. These have in common 5x. And these have in common negative 2. So my binomials are 2x plus 5 and 5x minus 2. Number 33 here. There is a greatest common factor of 4, which makes this 2x squared plus 5x minus 12, which still needs the window method. So I have 2x squared minus 12, and 2 times 12 is 24. Things that multiply to be 24 and subtract to be 5x are 8x and 3x. Sign chart says that the bigger one gets a plus. And I still have this 4 greatest common factor that I'm going to put on my binomials. So these have in common x. These have in common 4. These have in common 2x. And the last ones have in common negative 3. Find the values of k so that the trinomial x squared plus 5k or 5kx equals minus 35. So we know it's going to be x and x, and we are looking for things that multiply to be 35. So 1 and 35, 5 and 7 our only options. And so if this was factors, things that multiply by 20, 35 and subtract to b, so if I multiply those two, k could be 34. Or if the options were 5 and 7, those subtract to be 2. So my two options for k are 34 or 2. A construction company is planning to pour concrete for a driveway. The area of the driveway is represented by the expression w squared plus 14w minus 32 factor. So I'm looking for things that multiply to be 32 and subtract to be 14, which is 16 and 2. Sign chart says the bigger one gets a plus. Jacob hit his tennis ball into the air. The height of the tennis ball in feet is represented by the expression negative 16t squared minus 16t plus 32. And I can tell it has the greatest common factor of negative 16, which will leave me with t squared plus 1t plus 2. So I don't need the window method here. I start with t and t. What are things that multiply to be 2 and add? Nope, not add. I took out a negative 16, so I need to subtract to be 1. 2 and 1. Sign chart says the bigger one gets a plus.